Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
So today, we're diving into Tim Wu's book, The Curse of Bigness. It's really a structural analysis of how extreme market concentration, it transforms economic power into what starts to look a lot like governing power. Wu's argument is pretty stark. He's saying we're not just seeing similarities to the past, we are actively living through a repeat.
He argues we're in a new Gilded Age, and is defined by these massive monopolies and oligopolies that dominate just about everything. Finance, media, airlines, and most visibly, of course, the technology sector. You know the names: Google, Amazon, Facebook. These are firms with extraordinary power over commerce and information.
Now, how did we get here? Well, this didn't just happen by accident. It's actually the direct result of a 40-year experiment in deliberately weakening the very system that was designed to prevent this, the antitrust regime. I mean, these laws were originally created to protect economic liberty from unchecked private power.
To really understand the consequences of this weakened system, we kind of need a new way of looking at monopolies. And that brings us to a really crucial structural metaphor. Okay, let's get into this. The core idea is to stop seeing a monopoly as just a big company and start treating it as a private government. Because when a firm controls the essential infrastructure for an entire industry, for commerce or for communication, its behavior fundamentally changes. It's no longer just another player in the market.
So what does that mean in practice? Well, these private governments, they start setting the rules of the game for everybody else. They control who gets seen on their platforms, they dictate the terms for smaller businesses who completely depend on them, and they leverage their immense power over their workforce. You see, they aren't just competing anymore, they are ruling.
And what's crucial to get here is that this is not some new futuristic fear. No way. This is the original fear that created antitrust laws over a century ago. Senator Sherman, the guy whose name is on the first major antitrust act, he saw this exact concentration of power as something fundamentally anti-democratic.
So you have to ask, right? If this danger was so clear back then, what changed? This question leads us right to the central problem at the heart of our modern system. Over the last 40 years, the goal of the entire antitrust system was deliberately and dramatically narrowed. Heavily influenced by the Chicago School of Economics, the law's purpose shifted. It went from this broad concern about private power and liberty to a laser-like focus on just one thing: consumer welfare, which in practice almost always just means, are prices low right now?
And this right here is the whole ballgame. This is the crisis in perception. We've been taught to ask the wrong question. We ask, are prices low? When we should be asking, who holds the power here? It's this massive blind spot that allows these private governments to grow and grow, just as long as they keep prices down, or, in the case of big tech, offer us so-called free services.
This narrow focus doesn't just allow power to grow, it actually creates a dangerous feedback loop that helps make that power permanent. So let's take a look at how that loop is built.
You know, there's this common idea that bigger is always more efficient, but that's really not the full story. As Wu argues, after a certain point, firms don't necessarily get better at making things or serving customers. Instead, their focus shifts from efficiency to simply wielding power, to locking in their dominance and protecting their position at all costs. And this power becomes self-reinforcing. It becomes a cycle. First, economic power gets concentrated. Then, that economic power gets translated into political power, through lobbying, through campaign finance, the works. That political power is then used to weaken the very system meant to constrain it, like antitrust. And with the rules weakened, well, it becomes even easier to concentrate more power, and the cycle just starts all over again. And this isn't just a theoretical model, you know. The more consolidated an industry becomes, the easier it is for just a few players to coordinate and shape the rules in their favor. So let's just step back for a second and see the full system. So here's why this matters so much. This concentration of economic power, it doesn't just stay in its own little economic box. It directly impacts the health of all these other systems we depend on. It can corrode the political process. It allows a few gatekeepers to control the flow of information, what we see and hear. It gives huge corporations the leverage to suppress wages, and it dramatically fuels wealth inequality.
So, recognizing monopoly as a problem of governance, not just a problem of prices, is really the first big step towards seeing the system clearly. It forces us to ask what might be the most important question of all. If these massive entities are acting like governments, who is holding them accountable to the public?
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis and Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a longer audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.